Hello, everyone. I'm Deborah Gilroy, a psychologist who specializes in neuropsychology, and I'm here there with my colleague today to share information on a guide that we've developed for families of people with and the patients with neurocognitive impairment, i.e., dementia, mild cognitive impairment. So I'd like to introduce my colleague.
Hi, I'm Dr. Nicole Gonzalez. I'm an early career psychologist, also specializing in neuropsychology, and I had the pleasure of collaborating with Dr. Gilroy as well as with other members from our practice and putting this guide together to better educate our families and patients that have received diagnoses like the ones that Dr. Gilroy has mentioned in terms of mild cognitive impairment or different stages of dementia.
This guide that we developed in conjunction with a neurology representative was developed in response to family members and patients who've been diagnosed with cognitive impairment, as we discussed earlier, and who were looking for help in a variety of areas through our memory clinic. The memory clinic is co-run by a neurology physician's assistant and myself, and it helps the families to have one appointment to follow them through a very difficult journey. So we received many questions about a variety of problems that come up on this journey, and so we developed this guide together. And it is designed to help the patients and families at least get a start on what to do and where to find information.
So because of the high volume of referrals that the memory clinic receives on a regular basis, our practice is also providing these guides to our regular patients who are coming in to see other neuropsychologists here on staff. For many of you who perhaps are familiar with the process of testing, when the time of feedback comes, we only generally have between 45 minutes to an hour to kind of go over not just test results, but diagnostic impression, provide education, recommendations, resources, and 1 hour is just not enough time. So this guide has become kind of a supplement to our feedback session, and it allows us to be able to give the patient and their family something that's tangible that they can take with them to review and then return back with questions, concerns, and additional topics for us to discuss as we continue monitoring progress throughout the progression of their disease.
What kinds of things do you have in your workbook, or in your guide? What does it feature?
Well, we start with a table of contents that reviews just about everything that's in here. We cover things like terms that some people are familiar with, like sundowning, things to consider as the disease progresses. For example, legal issues, estate planning, powers of attorney. We have information about safety for patients and what the families or caregivers should be doing to ensure that safety, along with a lot of resource information be over and above what we've placed in the guide. We made the guide purposely short on each topic because people really aren't prepared to read a whole book, but do need information. So each topic has a short write-up, an extra tip, and then resources, online resources or books that people can look into.
And the content of the guide was written in such a way that is easily to be understood, but also from a patient's perspective. So one of my favorite areas is the bullet points of what I would like my family to know if I was the person carrying the dementia diagnosis. So kind of tidbits of information that sometimes our families perhaps are just unaware of, but also things to keep in mind as they interact with their loved ones. So communication strategies, how to manage difficult behaviors, things that can be very overwhelming and anxiety producing for the person providing care, but also quite confusing for the person who perhaps doesn't have the awareness or the knowledge that they are struggling in these ways.
Right. We understand that for caregivers and family members of patients and the patients, this is a journey that they've never been on before and probably won't go on again. And so they're very unfamiliar, and that makes sense, with all of the aspects that need to be considered.
What kind of feedback have you had from families that you've given this to?
So I find that most, if not all, of my patients have quite enjoyed the guide, not just because of the psychoeducation piece in terms of understanding perhaps difficult terms, things in terms of, where does this come from? What does progression look like? But I think the biggest takeaway for my patients has been the resources section, and how helpful it has been for them to have local resources that they can directly contact or reach out to. That's part of the really the nicest part about our resource section, is that we have provided contact information, whether it's phone numbers or websites. There's some addresses in here as well, so it's not just a random list of resources. It's been compiled in such a form that it's quite detailed and as easy as possible for the patients to reach out to these resources.
Right. I've had some pretty good feedback. People tell us that they feel that they're not quite as alone in this process as they might have suspected. There's a section on caregiver assistance, which is one thing we also focus on in the memory clinic. I think that the idea that, there's a guide we can actually look at and refer to and use for information, the feedback has been very positive in that regard.
I think I've also heard that it's, to a certain degree, kind of comforting, like you said, that they're not alone, but also that after this diagnosis is given, that they're not just leaving the office kind of on their own to kind of process this information. So the guide in and of itself kind of gives them like an outlet to then process.
Right, at least begin the journey that they did not choose to be on, feeling like they have some support throughout this process.
How would members of the public that are viewing this access this guide? Do you have any thoughts or ways that can be done, either now or in the future?
Well, we are offering the guide for sale to people who aren't our patients or caregivers that we work with. We want to recover the printing cost, so we're offering it for $15 a copy, and I believe there'll be a form on the website where you can request the guide for yourself or for your loved ones. You can purchase multiple ones. We do plan to update it every year or so because there's always new information.
And this guide will also be available to other professionals in the field, whether it's other psychologists or neuropsychologists that are interested in the topic, but also neurologists, occupational therapists, speech and occupational therapists as well. Our guide, I think, addresses a lot of areas that I think overlap within those fields as well. So if that's something that those professionals are interested in, can definitely reach out to us as well.
Did you have any final comments for the general public and things that you'd like people to know, especially about this guide?
I think that the guide in and of itself is a way to get started on the dementia journey or cognitive impairment journey. There's, of course, lots more information in on Amazon and websites, reputable and non-reputable, so be careful. But there's a lot of information out there, and this guide sort of brings that information together in at least one place, if not completely, certainly with additional resources.